The Silent City. The city of Montclair was known for its tranquility. Tucked away from the bustle of metropolitan life, it had the appearance of a perfect postcard town, charming streets, quaint cafes, and friendly neighbors. But under the facade of calm and order lay secrets, and when the murder of a prominent businessman shattered the town's serenity, it became clear that Montclair was a far darker place than anyone had ever imagined. Chapter 1: The Discovery. It was just after dawn when Officer Alex Harper received the call. He was used to routine disturbances, a bar fight, perhaps, or an occasional theft, but this call was different. As he arrived at the scene, the yellow crime scene tape fluttered in the cool morning breeze. There, on the pristine steps of the Montclair courthouse, lay the body of Thomas Pemberton, the wealthy CEO of Pemberton Industries. His company was responsible for half the town's economy, and his influence stretched far beyond the city limits. Alex crouched by the body, noting the deep, bloody wound across Pemberton's neck. It was clean, precise, as if done by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. The look of shock frozen on the victim's face suggested that Pemberton had known his killer, or at least, he hadn't expected to be murdered. Detective Lily Dawson arrived shortly after, a veteran of the Montclair Police Department with a sharp mind and an even sharper tongue. She wasted no time, her eyes scanning the scene with practiced efficiency. "This wasn't random," she muttered, almost to herself. "This was personal." Alex nodded, though he hadn't yet put the pieces together. Lily had a reputation for solving the town's most complex cases, and he was happy to follow her lead. But this murder was unlike any the town had ever seen. There was a message behind it, a motive waiting to be uncovered. Chapter 2: The Investigation Begins. As the investigation got underway, the first stop was Thomas Pemberton's widow, Margaret. She was a woman of impeccable social standing, known for her charity work and her connections to the political elite. Her shock seemed genuine when Lily and Alex arrived at her mansion, though she had a cold, distant demeanor that made her hard to read. "I loved my husband," Margaret said, her voice tight with restrained emotion. "He was everything to me." But as the days passed, cracks began to show. Rumors swirled around town that Thomas had been unfaithful, involved in an affair with his secretary, Claire. The police interviewed Claire, a young woman who seemed genuinely heartbroken by the news of Pemberton's death. "He was going to leave her," Claire confessed in a quiet voice, tears streaming down her face. "He said he wanted to start over with me. We were planning to run away." Lily filed away this information but didn't let her focus narrow too quickly. Claire's story seemed plausible, but there was something else about Pemberton's life that didn't add up. Chapter 3: Secrets Unveiled. The deeper Lily dug, the more she realized that Thomas Pemberton had been involved in far more than just a love affair. His business dealings, once seen as legitimate and above board, had a darker side. Pemberton Industries was entangled in a series of shady real estate deals, many of which had left people bankrupt or homeless. One of those people was Caleb Matthews, a construction worker who had lost his home after Pemberton's company forced his family off their land. Caleb had a temper and a long history of minor offenses, and it wasn't long before he became the prime suspect. When the police brought him in for questioning, he didn't deny his anger toward Pemberton, but he swore he had nothing to do with the murder. "I wanted him to pay for what he did to me and my family, but I didn't kill him," Caleb insisted. "I'd never do something like that." Still, the town buzzed with gossip. Caleb's history made him an easy target, and many believed he was guilty. But Lily wasn't convinced. She had a gut feeling that the true killer was still out there, hiding in plain sight. Chapter 4: The Web of Corruption. As Lily and Alex continued their investigation, they uncovered a trail of corruption that went far beyond Pemberton's personal affairs. It turned out that Montclair's beloved mayor, Richard Hayes, was heavily involved in Pemberton's shady business deals. The two men had been partners for years, using their power and influence to manipulate the local economy and enrich themselves. But there was one deal in particular that stood out: the acquisition of an old factory on the outskirts of town. Pemberton had promised to renovate it and bring jobs to Montclair, but instead, the factory had been left to rot. Rumor had it that the land was toxic, filled with hazardous waste that Pemberton had been paid to dispose of quietly. This deal had the potential to ruin both Pemberton and Hayes if it ever went public, and Lily suspected that someone had discovered the truth and wanted revenge. Chapter 5: A Fatal Betrayal. Just as Lily and Alex thought they were closing in on the killer, a new body was found. Claire, the secretary, had been strangled in her apartment. Her death sent shockwaves through the town once again, and it became clear that the killer was trying to cover their tracks. Lily spent long hours poring over the evidence, reviewing security footage, and interviewing witnesses. It was during one of these late nights that she stumbled upon a detail that had previously been overlooked: a phone call made from Claire's apartment the night of Pemberton's murder. The call had been to none other than Mayor Richard Hayes. It was the break Lily had been waiting for. She confronted the mayor, who initially denied any involvement, but as the pressure mounted, he finally broke down. It was an accident. Hayes cried, his voice shaking. Thomas was going to expose me. He wanted out of our deals, said he was tired of living with the guilt. I couldn't let him ruin everything I'd built. The confession came tumbling out. Hayes had confronted Pemberton on the courthouse steps, hoping to reason with him, but when Pemberton threatened to go public with the information, things had spiraled out of control. In a fit of rage, Hayes had killed him, slashing his throat in the heat of the moment. And Claire? She had known too much. After Pemberton's death, she had threatened to go to the police if Hayes didn't pay her off. Desperate, the mayor had killed her too, thinking he could silence her forever. Chapter 6: The Aftermath. With Hayes in custody, Montclair's dark secrets began to unravel. The factory deal, the real estate corruption, and the murders were all exposed to the public, sending shockwaves through the town. The once untouchable elite had fallen, and the townspeople were left to pick up the pieces. Lily Dawson, exhausted but satisfied, stood on the steps of the courthouse where the case had begun. She had solved the murders, but the cost of uncovering the truth had been steep. Montclair would never be the same, its image of perfection forever shattered. As she watched the sun set over the quiet streets, Lily couldn't help but wonder how many other secrets were still buried beneath the surface of this seemingly peaceful town. The end.